Hi, thank you so much, Ron. And yeah, I'm very much aligned with so much of what you're saying. I do have a question that's kind of at the whole other end of the spectrum, because I'm sensitive to what you point out regarding the numbers of housing that he has to meet. And right, there's this pressure that he's put on himself. And so how are we going to relieve that pressure? My question is actually about rent stabilized. The question is, the new tax abatement for private development has the A, B, and C levels. What we have, here in Red Hook, as you know, with the BMT project, is quite a lot of property where it's very small lots. And so the only use case for private development to help increase housing would probably be that C section where it's not a very large building. My hope is, we could replace, as you're saying, the manufacturing while putting housing in and using that like level C, which only requires that the rent is stabilized. So right now that would mean market rate, which is crap. But when we look 20, 30 years out, does that start to produce the integrated neighborhoods that we want to see? Or do we feel like rent stabilized units are not going to be part of the solution? I'm just, again, trying to put more tools in the bucket so that there's less pressure on these old solutions on using them on our private property. So I'm just sort of curious if rent stabilized units are a useful component and should there be reason to push that on some of these lots? Part of the reason that I'm worried about this is that a lot of these empty lots and smaller properties contain a lot of affordability because they've been owned by the same person for a long time. And if those people start selling them for other types of development, we lose the affordability. So if we can go to those property owners citywide now and work with them on joint ventures with responsible low-income developers and use that Part C of the tax law, I'm just wondering if we can preserve more affordability using those existing tiny lots and start increasing the numbers in a different way.
First of all, I have to apologize. I'm not that familiar with the differences between A, B, and C, so I can't answer the question that way. I do want to clarify one thing. I do not believe that a lot of the land that now is zoned manufacturing should be converted to housing. I think we should be careful about what we want to protect, and we do want to protect the manufacturing that takes place in Red Hook. I think there are possibilities in some parts of Red Hook, which I've been working in and with since 1970, that are suitable for mixed-use buildings if you sort of zone it vertically, so that you have some industrial with residential perhaps nearby or above it. I would hope eventually that we'd arrive at a point where we would put a reversionary interest in every public site so that whenever it is sold for profit, the public benefits either financially or programmatically. For instance, there's Site 5 opposite the Barclays Center in Brooklyn that is now private, will go to the private developer. That site goes for a certain amount of money. The arena itself went for a certain amount of money. The state gave it away to first a Russian billionaire, and then who sold to a Chinese billionaire who has made billions of dollars on the value of that stadium, literally made well over $1 billion on it. And the state got nothing. We should have reversionary interest in all public land. And to my mind, that's it. Also street beds and things of that sort, so that we can make sure that there's a public benefit that accrues always to the public sector. And so, again, I think in your case, I would try to see whether or not, how do we partner the public with the private owners to make sure they're able to build infill housing, and maybe infill housing that has rent controls built into it so that you can never sell it for a large profit, that you would maybe regain your investment so that there's some form of clause up on the resale provisions of that project. We tried to do that in the 70s on all the housing turned over to community-based groups and cooperatives. Could we take a certain percentage of that, any profit that would go back into the public sector that would finance new public housing? One of the things that's wrong, I said it a bit earlier, is that our system of real estate is one of the only ways that people myself, the only way we could build up wealth or capital was through the housing we own. But that creates inflation of housing, and the next generation cannot benefit the way my generation benefited. So somehow we have to provide other ways for low and moderate income people to gain wealth through the economy rather than just through housing.